Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 208 of the Prancing Pony Podcast, where we are welcomed again with joy and renewed hope.
And now we must set our men in readiness. Folks, go ahead and pull up a bench in the common room. I'm Sean Marchese, the real-life Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the man of the West, whose axe is restless in his hand, Alan Sisto.
Even with a row of orc necks, Sean, I'd probably rather sleep.
I think I probably would too, honestly. My adventuring days are behind me.
That they are well behind me. Folks, today we are going to be talking about the second part of Helm's Deep. Now that's chapter 7 in book 3 of The Lord of the Rings. This is when Saruman's assault on Helm's Gate begins.
Now, for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. Here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, we are working our way through J.R.R. Tolkien's Legendarium, a few pages at a time.
We study the details, we make connections to other writings, and we talk about our favorite themes.
And we have a lot of fun along the way, so we're really glad you joined us.
And we hope you'll be glad you joined as well.
Yeah.
But before we get back to the text, it's time for one of my favorite intro segments, This Week in Tolkien History.
All right. Well, this episode is releasing on May 9th. So you're probably asking yourself, well, what happened to Tolkien this week?
Yeah, I always ask that.
Kind of like my parents probably used to say about me, what happened to Sean this week?
Oh,
goodness.
It was
always something.
It's always something with that Sean guy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for starters, Tolkien was a bit more productive than I was. In 1915, on May 10th, he painted a watercolor of Kor, what was then the city of the gnomes in Valinor. Now that, of course, would later become Cortirion, and then eventually became Tirion of Tirion upon Tuna fame.
Mm-hmm.
The painting, called The Shores of Faerie, can be found in Hammond and Skull's volume Artist and Illustrator as figure 44.
Yeah. Well, a couple of years earlier, so this would be 1913, on May 11th, something very interesting must have happened. But we just don't know exactly what. What we do know is that the next day there was a meeting of the Stapledon Society. Now, this was a student body at Exeter College in Oxford. The minutes of that meeting say that Tolkien described a confrontation between Town and Gown that he had been a part of the night before. He then, quote, went on to describe his arrest and subsequent release, and told how on returning to college, he had delighted the spectators by a magnificent if unavailing attempt to scale the Swiss cottage, and had spent the rest of the evening in climbing in and out of Mr. Barnett's window.
Well, okay, maybe
then.
Tolkien did have more fun when he was young.
Maybe he did. I was never arrested in college.
I was never arrested and then released.
Well,
I was never arrested.
I was going to say you were arrested and then held.
And I never attempted to scale anything except maybe a fence or two.
I scaled a couple buildings, but yeah.
Did you really, like Spider-Man style?
No. It was like you could climb this. It's a long story. It really wasn't that difficult. I'm not that. It was a building with a sloping roof, and you could get on one spot. You could get on fairly easily if you could just climb a little bit. And once you're there, you just walk up to the top.
Wow.
It's a piece of cake.
That's pretty impressive, man. I had no idea. Well, apparently Tolkien's got both of us.
Oh, yeah. He's got us beat, hands down.
He's got us both beat, for sure.
I mean, we know that this is not the Carfax bus incident because the dates don't match up.
And neither of us ever stole a bus.
But that's another thing he's done, right? I mean,
yeah,
he stole a bus, man.
Yep.
Because that one, he said he faced no consequences for that.
That's right.
Yeah. So that was not this. Anyway.
So that was one of his more successful misdemeanors.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the one he got caught for, whatever it was.
Whatever it was, he got released. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is brilliant.
All right. Well, I'm going to move on with This Week in Tolkien History. And you know what? I'm going to bend the rules a little bit. I'm going to go back to the week that just passed because I think that works too.
Well, this week could mean this
it
past
could be this
week
past
or
week or this coming week. You know,
fair.
We've got a window to work with here. So I'm going to tell you about something that happened on May 3rd, 1938, because you're going to want to hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the date that Tolkien received Rainer Unwin's report on what, at the time, was just a sequel to The Hobbit. According to Hammond and Skull, Rainer's report said that the second and third chapters have too much Hobbit talk, making it lag a little, but that otherwise it is very good, and that the Black Riders seem all right.
Seem all right, as in effectively scary, not decent, trustworthy fellows, one hopes.
One hopes.
Or-
One hopes it wasn't like, oh, these Black Rider guys, these seem trustworthy.
Yeah, they seem all right.
Maybe Frodo should go, or maybe Bingo should go with those guys.
Yeah, Rayner might have missed the point on that one if that's the case. But
Yeah.
of course, he was only 12 at that point, so I think we can give that to him.
When I was 12, I probably would have trusted the Black Riders.
Probably.
Let's be honest.
Do you want some candy, little boy?
Yeah. Fortunately, never had any of those adventures either.
No, thankfully, no. I can just see the Nazgul now driving a white van, though.
Totally. Yeah.
All right.
No
So
windows.
if we're going to go back to the week that just passed, then in 1944, Tolkien wrote the first chapter of Book 4, Chapter 5. That's the chapter we now know as The Window on the West, but at the time it was simply called Faramir. And of course, it's my favorite character, so I had to take this one. He wrote to Christopher on May 6th, saying, "A new character has come on the scene. I'm sure I did not invent him. I did not even want him, though I like him. But there he came, walking into the woods of Ithilien. Faramir, the brother of Boromir. And he's holding up the catastrophe by a lot of stuff about the history of Gondor and Rohan, with some very sound reflections, no doubt, on martial glory and true glory."
Now he wrote again to Christopher on May 11th, saying, "I completed my 4th new chapter, Faramir,
Mm-hmm.
which received fullest approbation from CSL and CW on Monday morning."
Uh-huh.
Well, in 1944, May 11th was a Thursday, so he's referring to a meeting with C.S. Lewis and Charles Williams, that's the CW there, on May 8th.
Uh-huh.
And this coming week in 1944, he wrote about Frodo and Sam reaching Minas Morgul.
He was productive then. I mean,
He was.
cranked out the Faramir chapter and then immediately
Yeah.
moves on to Minas Morgul. That's,
Yeah.
wow.
Well, he wrote in those bursts.
That's true.
He would write a lot for a few weeks,
Yeah.
and then he would take a break for months.
Months. It's true. Well, you mentioned a minute ago his meeting with C.S. Lewis and Charles Williams. Sadly, just a year later, on May 15th, 1945, C.S. Lewis broke the news to him that Charles Williams had passed away earlier that day at the age of only 58. So that would have been a very sad day for him.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, in 1950, in this week, Tolkien was in the middle of moving, along with Edith and Priscilla, to 99 Holywell Street in Oxford, where they would live for just under 3 years.
And 4 years later, in 1954, when they were no longer living on Holywell Street, the Fellowship of the Ring went to press on May 12th.
Wow.
By that point, they were at 76 Sandfield Road, where they would stay until 1968.
All these things happening in these couple of weeks of May. That's pretty amazing stuff.
It's a very busy time for Tolkien in his life, isn't it? No matter what year you pick, there's like something going on this time.
And I've got one last one. On May 5th, 1957, Tolkien accepted an offer of £1,250. Now I looked that up. It's worth about £26,000 today, which is about $36,000 from Marquette University for his manuscripts from The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Now, let me
Wow.
just tell you, I would sell whatever I needed to if I found out I could buy those manuscripts for $36,000. My car, my kidney, your kidney, Sean, whatever it took.
I don't doubt that for a second, actually. How about if you just give me the $36,000 and I'll just get you in touch with Bill Fliss so you can take a look at the manuscripts?
How about I just don't take your kidney and you get me in touch with Bill Fliss?
I can do that too. I'm pretty sure I can get you in touch with Bill Fliss.
Fair enough. I'll leave your kidney alone. One last thing before we dive into the text, though. Call it an addendum, clarification, whatever you want. It's actually a correction. I just didn't want to say that. But back in episode 201, I hate that word.
It never gets any easier to say
No,
it
it doesn't.
does
We're 208 episodes in, and it's still not easy to admit
It's still
this.
hard, yeah.
So in 201, we were talking about Gandalf's resurrection, right? We quoted at length from letter number 156 about the obligations that Gandalf still had, even as Gandalf 2.0, to conceal his power.
Yeah, that's right. I remember I had read that line from the letter about Gandalf having emergency powers.
Yeah.
When the enemy's own powers are too great for the opposers. And then he can act in emergency as an angel, no more violently than the release of St. Peter from prison.
Yeah, that's where I messed up. I totally didn't have this in my notes, so I was going off the top of my head, and the top of my head was completely mixed up. I got Peter's escape from prison, which is recorded in Acts 12, mixed up with Paul's release from prison in Acts 16. So just to be clear, Peter's escape was really nonviolent. An angel shows up, wakes him, tells him to get up. The chains fall off. Peter's told to put on his clothes and follow the angel. The angel escorts him all the way out of the jail, through the city, and out the gate of the city, and says, "You're free." I'd mentioned an earthquake, which is what happened when Paul was in prison. The doors there open and everybody's chains come loose. The jailer is about ready to take his own life because he thought the prisoners had escaped. Paul and Silas had stayed. The next day, he was released. Apparently, the authorities were going to do that anyway because the earthquake didn't figure into the escape at all. Yeah, so I apparently threw those two stories into a blender. And folks, I am embarrassed and I apologize.
Well, it's, look, it happens to the best of us, Alan.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it happens to you too sometimes.
Oh,
but
the sting of it. The sting of it hurts.
But as I'm saying that, I have absolutely no room to talk because I obviously wasn't familiar with either of those stories. So look, I got just as much egg on my face as you do. But fortunately, there is a story that I am familiar with, and that's the story that we're here to discuss. How about that?
Fair enough.
And I'm ready to get back into it. So,
oh yeah.
Do you want to take us back, Alan? Back to the Hornburg?
Back to the Hornburg. All right. The king and his riders passed on. Before the causeway that crossed the stream, they dismounted. In a long file, they led their horses up the ramp and passed within the gates of the Hornburg. There they were welcomed again with joy and renewed hope, for now there were men enough to man both the burg and the barrier wall. Quickly Éomer set his men in readiness. The king and the men of his household were in the Hornburg, and there also were many of the Westfold men. But on the Deeping Wall and its tower, and behind it, Éomer arrayed most of the strength that he had, for here the defense seemed more doubtful, if the assault were determined and in great force. The horses were led far up the deep, under such guard as could be spared. The Deeping Wall was 20 feet high, and so thick that 4 men could walk abreast along the top, sheltered by a parapet over which only a tall man could look. Here and there were clefts in the stone through which men could shoot. This battlement could be reached by a stair running down from a door in the outer court of the Hornburg. 3 flights of steps led also up onto the wall from the deep behind. But in front it was smooth, and the great stones of it were set with such skill that no foothold could be found at their joints, and at the top they hung over like a sea-delved cliff.
Oh man, I can't wait to talk about that wall, but hang on, we got to go back to the beginning of the passage.
We do.
So we start with the king and his riders not suddenly keeling over dead, but actually riding.
Passed on.
Yeah. But they ride and then they dismount and go over the causeway heading into the gates.
So when they dismounted, what sort of grade did they get from the judges? 9.5.
9.8. Yeah.
Théoden does a little somersault coming off the horse. Degree of difficulty low.
It's got to be hard to do in armor.
It would be exceedingly hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Anyway, so they dismounted.
And then they go over the causeway heading into the gates. Mm-hmm. And they're met with joy and renewed hope. I think this phrase is so important.
Isn't that a beautiful phrase? And renewed hope. And it's not just because it's the king, but now there's hope for the battle because now the fortress and the wall can be manned properly. That's huge.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. They've got numbers now.
They've got the manpower to do this, right?
You're right. It's not just because it's the king, but not only do they have the numbers, but obviously they've got good leaders here too.
Yes, the king is there, Aragorn is there, Éomer is there. This is big.
Absolutely. And Éomer, obviously, captain of an Éored, he gets to work right away.
Oh, yeah.
Putting his men in readiness. Now, the king and his men are in the Hornburg. They're kind of meeting there with some of Erkenbrand's troops.
Mm-hmm. And Éomer puts his men on the wall's tower and then behind the wall. Interesting. And I think that's because, as the text tells us, he felt this was the weak spot.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, he may have thought this, but I don't know. Let's look at the details of the Deeping Wall.
Okay. We did mention this last episode, but it's certainly worth revisiting. We get the description of it being 20 feet tall. So folks in, any place but here, that's just over 6 meters in height. And it's thick enough for 4 men to walk abreast, probably armored men. And I can't imagine they want armored men rubbing shoulders. So I'm thinking at least 16 feet in width, maybe at least 12. What do you think?
Right. Yeah, no, that sounds probably about right. I was thinking between 12 and 16.
Yeah.
Probably because we talked about this last time.
Probably.
But then there's this high parapet.
Yes.
Very high. Only a tall man could look over it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are these clefts to shoot through, which, of course, anybody who knows anything about castles, medieval fortifications, and I only know the tiniest bit, but this is a thing, right? You've seen this before.
Well, yeah, you've only seen it, I think, in Monty Python and the Holy Grail when the French...
That's where I've seen it. And I know that you can catapult a cow over them, for sure.
Right. But you have to catapult it. You can't just drop it over the edge.
Yeah, no, exactly. But no, of course, you would expect to have these on a fortification. Now, there's also a stair from the outer court of the Hornburg, and then 3 separate flights of stairs behind that.
Right, leading to the deep or from the deep, as the case may be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And this is also really important. The front of the wall, so, facing the enemy, is very smooth.
Yes.
And there's an overhang at the top. And of course, that's because you don't want anyone to be able to climb up it. Imagine climbing a wall, as Alan has done, apparently.
Oh, it was just like an 8-foot tall wall. It's not that big a deal.
But, if you've got footholds, it's one thing. But if
Yeah.
it's very smooth, and then suddenly there's this overhang at the top.
Right. The building I was talking about had the opposite of an overhang. It had this nice, 40-degree sloped roof.
Right.
This is the other way.
Yeah.
But that's the whole point, right? This is a
Right.
wall that's meant to be a strong defense.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're going to go back right now to a collection of unmitigated pedantry for a moment. That's the blog we talked about last week by Dr. Brett Devereaux. He's the historian who gave us some insights into the supply chain considerations that are at the heart of this battle.
Yeah, and before we go on, I actually do want to take some time to thank Brett for his blog.
Oh, yeah.
And also for his communication with us about sharing his blog on our podcast. He's been really gracious to us, very supportive. He actually said he wants to listen to the show, so that's awesome.
Wow. Well, that's only because he hasn't heard us yet. He might change his mind, Sean.
He might change his mind when he hears. But folks, please go check him out by searching for A Collection of Unmitigated Pedantry and by following Brett on Twitter at BRET, Brett, Devereaux, DEVEREAUX.
Mm-hmm.
And if you missed that, check the show notes on our website or just hit that back 10 seconds button.
That's a pretty convenient button, really. And if you like his stuff, he's also on Patreon, so you can support him there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, Devereaux points out that Éomer arranges the defense, and here his information is better than in the film. Éomer benefits from the more ample scouting arrangements that Théoden has in the books. He knows an assault is coming very soon, so he immediately mans the walls, concentrating his strength on the weakest defenses. The rear guard is left at the dike, which provides warning, a limited defense in depth, and crucially creates a window for any stragglers from Théoden's or Erkenbrand's forces to regroup at the fortress. Meanwhile, Gimli had already seen to the provisions of the fortress, in case the assault turned into a siege. So, although the circumstances, especially time, force, and information, are different, in both cases, and he's talking about the film and the book, the Rohirrim set in and prepare effectively, focusing on the more immediate and important concerns first. That preparation will serve them well in the battle to come.
That's right. But he does point out that the dike itself is set rather too far away to be a useful defense. These lower outwalls were a common way of creating a stronger defense by keeping siege equipment from getting close to the wall, for one thing.
Yeah.
But they were usually close enough to the main wall to be supported by missile fire from the main fortress.
Mm-hmm.
And that means it can't be kept for very long, and as we'll see, it's not.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it was designed to keep battering rams and other siege equipment from getting close to the walls, but more importantly, to stop them within range of archers from the top of the...
So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you want to support
because
it.
if you stop them too far back,
Yeah.
then you can't shoot them.
No, you can't. And of course, that's why it doesn't get kept for very long. But we've got another time when the movies give up some accuracy in order to give a bit more of a cinematic touch. In the text, you'll read about that parapet being so tall that only a tall man could look over it, and that there were clefts in the stone here and there that enabled men to shoot. Well, let's tell you what those are. The clefts are called crenels, and the solid portion between them is called a merlin. Now, the whole system makes it a crenellated parapet.
Right. And that's exactly what we were talking about when we described it.
You've seen that in every castle, in every film.
Absolutely. But as Devereaux points out, in the film version, the archers on the wall are exposed from the chest up.
Yeah.
That in turn makes the crenels useless because you aren't fighting through them, but over the merlins.
No. Yeah.
These are Devereaux's words here. This is not how castle walls were designed.
Good reason.
Rather, the merlins should offer complete cover for the archer, who can then step around to the lower crenels to fire while still shielding his body behind the merlin. And of course, that makes perfect sense.
Of course it does, because now instead you're shooting over the merlin.
Right.
And if you happen to step in front of a crenel, now you're really exposed to some very sensitive parts. You don't want to get shot there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you can get shot lots of sensitive places.
The movie makes the parapet so low that Legolas has to offer Gimli a box to stand on. But let's be honest, Gimli's in the right spot here. Gimli is protected by the wall instead of exposing most of his vital organs to enemy arrows.
Right. Yeah. Gimli's response should have been, "No, I don't want a box. Don't you know how walls work, elf?"
They will stop the arrows. The air will not. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, speaking of Gimli, chatting with Legolas about that, you're picking up right there.
Yes, indeed. Gimli stood leaning against the breastwork upon the wall. Legolas sat above on the parapet, fingering his bow and peering out into the gloom. "This is more to my liking," said the dwarf, stamping on the stones. "Ever my heart rises as we draw near the mountains. There is good rock here. This country has tough bones. I felt them in my feet as we came up from the dike. Give me 100 and 100 of my kin, and I would make this a place that armies would break upon like water." "I do not doubt it," said Legolas. "But you are a dwarf, and dwarves are strange folk. I do not like this place, and I shall like it no more by the light of day. But you comfort me, Gimli, and I am glad to have you standing nigh with your stout legs and your hard axe. I wish there were more of your kin among us, but even more would I give for 100 good archers of Mirkwood. We shall need them. The Rohirrim have good bowmen after their fashion, but there are too few here, too few."
Indeed, there are. But let's go back to the beginning of that passage. We get Gimli leaning against the parapet while Legolas sits on top of it. Please don't do that during the battle, Legolas.
Again, not very useful if you're sitting on top of the wall.
It's supposed to protect you, but it only does that when you're behind it.
Yeah.
Of course, this is where we'd insert the "shall I get you a box" joke.
Yeah.
So,
but no, because
no.
When we get Gimli the box, he just dies.
I know. He just gets shot. It's a terrible thing. He goes all Boromir on us.
Oh, man, that's sad. I do love... This is like the most dwarvish thing to
isn't
say,
it?
right?
Yeah.
Gimli's expressing his admiration for the good rock here.
This is classic rock. This
that's
is
right. This
good
is
rock.
Good rock. That's right, man. This is Zeppelin. This is Pink Floyd.
This isn't Quiet Riot, man.
No.
This is Zepp.
No, this is good rock.
This isn't Poison, man. This is AC/DC.
That's right. That's right. This is Def Leppard, man.
Yeah.
Good stuff. but yeah, the tough bones of the land. And he sees the potential of the place. Now I'm making it sound like it's a fixer-upper house, but it's like
it's got great bones, right? I mean,
right,
it totally does,
right. Tough, yeah, great bones, and I'm seeing so much potential here. If I just had 100 dwarves with me,
knock out this wall, make it a big common room. Yeah, get a little more natural light in here.
But this is a dwarvish way of doing that. He's saying basically, look, if I had 100 dwarves with me, we could make this place completely impregnable. They're not looking to knock out a wall and put like a cute little island in or anything like that. No, they're going to make this an impregnable fortress.
They're not building a wine cellar. No.
Maybe a beer cellar.
Maybe for the dwarves, you're right. So he says, I'd make this place a place that armies would break upon like water, which frankly suggests it's not already that. He sees some weaknesses, or he wouldn't be saying it could make it even better.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
That's a very
I wonder
good
what
point.
those weaknesses are, but we'll see. I think I know one of them.
Yeah. I think we'll see a couple of them in the coming episodes.
Yeah.
But of course, not surprisingly, Legolas doesn't like this place as much. Gimli's appreciation for this place
doesn't have enough curb appeal. Needs more trees, man.
It needs more trees. That's exactly it. Yeah.
It's about to have a lot more trees.
Oh, well done.
Maybe too many.
But yeah, he points out, look, dwarves are strange folk. This is not my kind of place.
No.
But this is a great fellowship moment. He's like, look, you're okay, man. Sure, you're strange to me, but you know what? If you're good, I'm good. You comfort me.
I love that line. And what's great about it, and I'm sure you caught this, it is an almost identical mirror to something that Gimli said earlier. If we go back just 2 chapters, the 3 hunters have entered Fangorn. They've not even encountered Gandalf yet. Yeah, you know where I'm going. So
I know exactly where you're going.
Yeah. Legolas talks about how he could have been happy in this forest in times of peace. And Gimli's response, you are a wood elf anyway, though elves of any kind are strange folk, yet you comfort me. Where you go, I will go. And here we get almost the exact same thing.
It's almost exactly the same line. Yeah.
You're a dwarf. Dwarves are strange folk, but you comfort me. I love this. Yeah.
Yeah. It shows the bond between these two.
It does.
And just how much trust and love and friendship is there between these two. And it's great. It's a wonderful, wonderful fellowship moment. And, it's not the first mirrored statement between these two.
No.
And I don't think it's the last either.
I don't think it is. I think we'll see a few more.
There are going to be some more.
Mm-hmm.
But even Legolas, he's like, hey, look, I wish there were some more dwarves here too.
Yeah.
We could do with some more dwarves.
We could.
Man.
We could do with some really tough dwarves with big battle axes ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? As much as I want those dwarves, I would rather have 100 Mirkwood archers. Which, again, when you're the defender in a siege, that's probably your best call.
Archers are going to be useful.
Yeah, and he laments the small number of archers that the Rohirrim have. They just don't have many.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, maybe that's because they're a cavalry force primarily. I don't know, but
it could just be because they've already had some attrition in this war.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, that's true.
Probably lots of reasons for it.
Yeah.
Gimli, moving on though, does the Gimli thing. I mean, come on,
yeah.
Let's face it. If he's not saying, "What about the old man?" or "I really would rather not ride this horse,"
which he does say a lot.
He does say both of those a lot.
Yeah.
But here he is griping about not getting enough sleep.
Oh,
right?
That's right. Riding is tiring work. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so tired, but my axe is restless in my hand. I like that.
I do too.
And I love that. Just again, wonderful turn of phrase. Give me a row of orc necks and room to swing.
Oh,
specifically
man.
orc necks, not man necks, which I like.
Not Dunlanding necks, no.
Right. He won't revel in hewing man necks.
No.
But yeah, he'll revel
orc
in
necks, on the other
necks.
hand, I'm all about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. He doesn't need a Red Bull, just a row of orc necks and room to swing.
That's right. Give me some of that and I won't be tired anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
Such bravado, It
is. It is. He's talking about sleep. But you know what? Talk about not getting enough sleep. Do you know what's happening this weekend, Sean? I think you do.
Oh, I think I do.
It's our digital moot, folks. It starts on this Friday, May 14th, and runs through Sunday. Now, you're going to want to visit our website, theprancingponypodcast.com, to get all of the information and to register before it's too late. You're almost out of time. We are going to be closing registrations down at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Wednesday, May 12th, in order to give us the time to get everything set up for the people who are attending. That's 11:59 Eastern Time, Wednesday, May 12th. Registrations are going to close altogether, so hurry.
And we cannot belabor this enough. Only a couple of days left, folks. So please, please, please register now if you have not already.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard us talking about it for the past few weeks. We're excited. We hope you're excited. One of our keynote speakers is Dr. Amy Sturgis. She has taught courses on Tolkien and Harry Potter. She's taught on Star Wars and Star Trek. And you are not going to want to miss her. I promise. She's going to be amazing.
Yes, she absolutely will be. And our other keynote speaker, Dr. Michael Drought. Now, he joined us here on the PPP all the way back in episode 66. He's the editor for the J.R.R. Tolkien Encyclopedia. He's a co-editor for the journal Tolkien Studies. He's been involved with Lotro. He's done a gazillion things. And we are so excited to have him join us as well. And don't forget the last-minute surprise guest we told you about last week, Dr. Tom Shippey, will be joining us as well.
That is correct. And I got to tell you, folks, we are so happy to have just such an amazing roster of speakers.
It really
lined
is
up.
amazing.
We're over the moon. Now, the theme for this first PPP Moot is digital recovery. It's all about the many ways we find fairy online and regain a clear view from virtual communities and online fandom. In addition to our keynote speakers, we have got a full slate of presentations and a lot of fun social events as well. We've got a pub quiz lined up. We've got a live Ask Me Anything style episode recording coming up. So please plan on joining us.
Please do. And check out the event pages where you can look at the schedule, check out more information about our speakers, and of course, like we've been saying, register to attend the Moot. We've worked really hard to make the Moot accessible to as many people as possible, both in terms of our time zones and cost. Only $35 for the entire weekend. So go to theprancingponypodcast.com and sign up today. Registration closes Wednesday, May 12th.
In case you haven't picked up on it by now.
I know.
Registration closes on Wednesday, May 12th.
Bang you over the head with that one, folks.
That's right. And of course, while you're on our website registering, you're going to want to check out the rest of the website as well, because we've still got a lot of good stuff there, from show notes and outtakes to Prancing Pony Ponderings and our online storefront where you can get PPP shirts, mugs, stickers, and more, including a specific Moot merch page.
That is absolutely right. Lovely good stuff there. Some great design from Megan. You're going to love those pieces, so please take a look. And one of the best resources we have on the website is, of course, our library. Now, our web guru, Phil Dean, has worked really hard on redesigning the library this season, and it shows. As you know, we love the books here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, and we just want to make sure you can get your hands on any of the books that we mention here.
Yeah, we may talk about a lot of Tolkien-related stuff on the podcast, but folks, you know that Alan and I are really fans of Tolkien's books and books about Tolkien. That's why we have the library page with links to every book we've mentioned on the show.
Now, we do make a few pennies from the purchases you make from those links, so thank you for your support. Now, folks, if you listened to our Tolkien Reading Day episode back in March, you heard a very special immersive audio version of our final reading.
That's right. Our producer, Jordan Rennells, put that together for us using sound effects, music, ambience layers, and 3D immersive audio software.
Now, he's created other scenes like that in his own podcast, Music of Middle-earth. You can hear Fog on the Barrow Downs, the coming of Tuor to Ulmo, and the attack on the Fellowship as they journey up Carathris.
Now, Jordan and one of our patrons, whose name you've likely heard a few times, Chad in Texas, have been working on a very special, fully immersive version of the Council of Elrond chapter in its entirety.
Yeah, it'll be a complete audio play with different actors and actresses for each of the characters, music, sound effects, and more.
Now, if you've signed up for our PPP Digital Moot this weekend, you'll get to hear a big segment of it on Sunday. But to hear it in its entirety when it's released, as well as other soundscape readings like it, you're definitely going to want to check out Music of Middle-earth on your favorite podcast app.
And if you haven't signed up for the Digital Moot, well, what are you waiting for? You've only got a few days left. Did we say Wednesday, May 12th?
I think we said it once or twice.
All right.
All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and get back into the text? And Alan, you're going to pick up with the next little bit.
Yes, I am. I'm skipping ahead a couple paragraphs here. Suddenly from the dike, yells and screams and the fierce battle cries of men broke out. Flaming brands appeared over the brink and clustered thickly at the breach. Then they scattered and vanished. Men came galloping back over the field and up the ramp to the gate of the Hornburg. The rear guard of the Westfolders had been driven in. "The enemy is at hand," they said. "We loosed every arrow that we had and filled the dike with orcs, but it will not halt them long. Already they are scaling the bank at many points, thick as marching ants. But we have taught them not to carry torches."
I bet you have.
I bet you have. Yeah, a few holes in you will teach you that lesson real fast.
Nice bright targets.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So yeah, Saruman's forces are advancing now,
Yeah.
and obviously the torches are quite visible coming up the valley.
Yeah.
As we see in the text before the passage that you read, but then also obviously they were quite visible to the archers too.
Uh-huh. Yeah, quite. And so now we learn that the rear guard of Erkenbrand's forces that were holding the dike have now been driven back. That's kind of the point, though. There's a little bit of defense in depth and a little bit of a warning.
Right.
They retreat to the Hornburg now.
That's right. And so the report from the rear guard is, look, we shot every arrow. We filled the dike with orcs.
Wow.
Which is interesting because there were orcs and men,
Mm-hmm.
but he points out we filled the dike with orcs.
Uh-huh.
But it's not enough. They
No.
keep coming. They're thick as marching ants.
Wow, that is a visual, isn't it?
It's quite, yeah. We get a couple of interesting visuals about the thickness of this force.
Yeah,
It's pretty cool.
it really is interesting. But of course, thick as they are, they're not going to carry torches anymore. So there's that.
No, certainly not.
The reason we broke that reading down separately, because it's obviously very short, seems like not a lot of things happen in there, but there's something that did happen that we really wanted to talk about. So Sean, why don't you take us back to Devereaux's blog again?
I will do that because he points out something really interesting about the orcs taking of the dike. He says, what is then absolutely stunning is that Saruman's host does not leave a force behind to defend the dike. If the dispersion after forcing the ford is the first moment we might point to as a decisive, catastrophic failure, this is the second. Countervallation, that's making a wall around your siege lines facing outward. Devereaux defines that for us. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Countervallation is a standard siege technique all the way from antiquity. And when your enemy countervallates for you, to then not man those prepared defenses with even a token force is just stunning.
It really is. He's absolutely right. Every time you see a siege in a movie where it's done properly, you see them also build an outer defense.
A wall behind them. The besieging army builds a wall behind them to protect themselves from anybody who comes to reinforce
The relief
castle
force.
being
That's
besieged.
right.
Yeah.
To protect them for the relief force, no doubt. And the fact that here you already have a defensive structure ready to go. All you got to do is put people on there. And by the way, not everybody can attack the walls at once, so maybe you should. Anyway, I'm going to go back to Devereaux's words because they're better than mine. He goes on to point out that given the preparation time, there ought to have been an advance unit, probably mounted infantry, which would have been specifically tasked to take the dike, which, as the text notes, was too wide to be defended effectively by Rohan's smaller force, and then hold it as a rear guard while the main army assaulted the fortress. Had this been done, Erkenbrand's later rescuing force would have found themselves attacking a superior force against prepared defenses and likely without the benefit of surprise, as Saruman's rearguard would have spotted them. But, as we have established, Saruman's host is not well led and seems to lack the organizational capability to split forces over multiple tasks like this. It proves a fatal vulnerability.
Even in the books,
Yeah.
Saruman's force is not a very well-prepared force. He's not a general.
No, he's not. I think we talked about this last week. Oh, I'm really good at building things. I'm a really good engineer. I'm really good at figuring out rings. I'm sure I can do this war
Surely I can
thing.
do this war thing.
How hard is it? Throw useless orcs at something until it breaks.
No, there's a lot more to it.
There is. And we just thought that was such a key point. Again, really highlighting Saruman's lack of preparation, even though he's been planning this for years.
Right.
His total lack of thinking ahead and any strategic foresight, was so worth talking about that we wanted to break that reading out into a separate little section. But now that the assault begins, I'm going to go back to Sean.
All right. And it has left me with a bit of a long reading, so hopefully folks won't mind.
I'm sure they won't mind.
It was now past midnight. The sky was utterly dark, and the stillness of the heavy air foreboded storm. Suddenly, the clouds were seared by a blinding flash. Branched lightning smote down upon the eastward hills. For a staring moment, the watchers on the walls saw all the space between them and the dike lit with white light. It was boiling and crawling with black shapes, some squat and broad, some tall and grim, with high helms and sable shields. Hundreds and hundreds more were pouring over the dike and through the breach. The dark tide flowed up to the walls from cliff to cliff. Thunder rolled in the valley. Rain came lashing down. Arrows thick as the rain came whistling over the battlements and fell clinking and glancing on the stones. Some found a mark. The assault on Helm's Deep had begun, but no sound or challenge was heard within. No answering arrows came. The assailing host halted, foiled by the silent menace of rock and wall. Ever and again the lightning tore aside the darkness. Then the orcs screamed, waving spear and sword, and shooting a cloud of arrows at any that stood revealed upon the battlements. And the men of the mark amazed looked out, as it seemed to them, upon a great field of dark corn tossed by a tempest of war, and every ear glinted with barbed light. Brazen trumpets sounded. The enemy surged forward, some against the deeping wall, others towards the causeway and the ramp that led up to the Hornburg gates. There the hugest orcs were mustered, and the wild men of the Dunland fells. A moment they hesitated, and then on they came. The lightning flashed, and blazoned upon every helm and shield the ghastly hand of Isengard was seen. They reached the summit of the rock. They drove towards the gates. Then, at last, an answer came. A storm of arrows met them, and a hail of stones. They wavered, broke, and fled back, and then charged again, broke and charged again. And each time, like the incoming sea, they halted at a higher point. Again trumpets rang, and a press of roaring men leaped forth. They held their great shields above them like a roof, while in their midst they bore 2 trunks of mighty trees. Behind them, orc archers crowded, sending a hail of darts against the bowmen on the walls. They gained the gates.
Oh, man. All right, well, that was a long passage, and we're going to go back to the beginning of that so that we can kind of get a feel for it. It's past midnight now, so we're talking about March 4th, and the assault properly begins. And we get one of those moments you mentioned, this idea of the dark tide of shapes. Earlier it was the marching ants. So the lightning, this big white lightning, shows up the space, and we get this just terrifying visual, isn't it? The quarter mile of space is just filled with the enemy.
Just filled with them, filled with crawling with orcs.
Boiling and crawling.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a brilliantly dramatic visual moment. I mean, there's a lot of sensory stuff there. You got the sound of the thunder and the rain.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, obviously the visual is what you remember, this flash of lightning to light the scene that otherwise they wouldn't be able to see.
No.
But when they do see it for just this flash, it's terrifying. It had to have been deeply, deeply demoralizing.
Oh, you bet. You bet.
Like, we can't see. Oh my gosh, that's what we couldn't see.
Right. Man.
And now the attackers start shooting.
Right.
And fortunately there's minimal effect. I mean, some found a mark, we're told, but for the most part, they're just kind of plinking down.
If they found a mark, it's because somebody was standing in the wrong spot. Don't stand in front of the griddle. Stand behind the merman.
Who gave Gimli a box? Now we have no dwarf. But there's no answering arrows from the walls. No sound.
Well, Well, that stymies Saruman's forces. I mean, they're totally lost, foiled by the menace of rock and wall.
Mm-hmm. And then we get another fantastic, terrifying moment. The orcs are screaming, waving their weapons, just shooting at anyone they can see up on the battlements.
Yeah. And I think this is another good moment to return to Brett's blog. He discusses the film version at length, and I'm going to mention a couple of things there. He talks about the odd decision to have Aragorn speak in Elvish, a phrase that ends up being captioned as prepare to fire. He points out that is indeed a rather odd thing to say in a pre-gunpowder era. Wouldn't it be more like...
Yeah, because you don't actually fire arrows.
No, you don't fire arrows. You just fire. What is that about? You wouldn't use that word.
Right.
But so he points that out, and so I had to bring that up. But his point here is that the exchange in the book is a bit more complex. The defenders are hiding behind the ramparts as Saruman's host approaches, and the latter begins attempting to suppress the defenders with arrows, but the defenders hold their response, presumably preserving arrows and stamina for when the arrows will be most useful.
Oh, yeah.
Unexpected lack of reply causes Saruman's host to stall out for a moment, foiled by the silent menace of rock and wall. I noticed that he calls out that same line that I mentioned a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
He says that speaks to insufficient drill, training, and leadership. There ought to be a host of junior officers and NCOs already getting their troops moving rather than standing dumbfounded because the enemy didn't return fire as expected. But given what we've already discussed about Saruman's lack of proper preparation, the fact that his army falls apart every time anything goes even a little bit sideways is not a huge surprise. Let's be honest. What Devereaux is saying here is what we've been saying. Saruman's quite the amateur, and we're going to see this theme repeated again and again.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like you said, I think he just assumed, throw enough orcs at it and it'll break at some point. And that's what he's done. He's just amassed numbers. And we see that here. I mean, obviously we saw them crawling in front of the wall, and we see this comparison of them to a great field of dark corn.
Yeah.
That's another really striking visual image. Obviously he's got numbers, but like you said, he's got no organization.
None at all. None.
But so now we get the trumpets and we get the surge of the enemies, some coming against the deeping wall, but the biggest orcs and the wild men of Dunland are actually going up the ramp to the gates. They've got something else in mind.
Yeah, that actually, there is some strategy involved here, or some tactics, I should say. I mean, at least they know one thing. But that, of course, prompts the answer. Now we see arrows and stones coming from the battlements.
Finally. And then we see what we would expect to see, this cyclical process of wavering, breaking, retreating, reforming, charging again, rinse and repeat, each time kind of getting a little bit closer. I was like, and we get this image of the tide, right? Almost like an advancing tide, like the sea coming in.
And hoping that you can outlast the tide.
Yep, exactly.
So we see the battering ram come forward, and archers are behind to protect it, which is, of course, a good tactical move.
Yeah, no, and I think it's worth pointing out that the people carrying the ram are actually men, but the archers behind it are orcs.
Yeah. By the way, a hat tip to Brett Devereaux again for reminding us that holding shields above their heads like this, that's called a testudo formation.
That's right. That's actually Latin for tortoise, which for obvious reasons, if you've ever seen it, you can understand why it's called a tortoise. And it's a Latin word because it was an actual Roman tactic.
Right.
So anyway, the rammers get to the gates and they start to work. And every time one falls, two take his place.
Yeah.
Oh,
they're fighting against some very big numbers at this point, and it's a tough battle.
Yep.
And that's why I'm going to read the next section.
All right.
Because it's time. It's time to stop this. Éomer and Aragorn know it.
Yes. It's a great moment.
Come, said Aragorn. This is the hour when we draw swords together. Running like fire, they sped along the wall and up the steps and passed into the outer court upon the rock. As they ran, they gathered a handful of stout swordsmen. There was a small postern door that opened in an angle of the burg wall on the west, where the cliff stretched out to meet it. On that side, a narrow path ran round towards the great gate, between the wall and the sheer brink of the rock. Together, Éomer and Aragorn sprang through the door, their men close behind. The two swords flashed from the sheath as one. "Guthwina!" cried Éomer. "Guthwina for the mark!" "Andúril!" cried Aragorn. "Andúril for the Dunedain!" Charging from the side, they hurled themselves upon the wild men. Andúril rose, fell, gleaming with white fire. A shout went up from wall and tower. "Andúril! Andúril goes to war! The blade that was broken shines again!" Dismayed, the rammers let fall the trees and turned to fight. But the wall of their shields was broken as by a lightning stroke, and they were swept away, hewn down or cast over the rock into the stony stream below. The orc archers shot wildly and then fled.
Oh, yeah.
Big moment here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, big
Yeah.
moment.
Again, the leadership of Aragorn and Éomer. I mean, again, seasoned soldiers. They both clearly recognize the imminent danger because of the rams. It actually says, in that sudden flash of light, they saw them and they beheld the peril.
Yeah, they knew
Love that.
This was trouble.
They knew this is what we got to deal with. I mean, that's leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would not have made the right decision in that moment, but they do, and that's what's important.
That's why Aragorn's a future king and you're just a podcaster.
That's right. That is exactly right. And then we get the famous line about drawing swords together.
Yes, I love this line.
I love this line. I do think we need to discuss it, and I have to warn folks, little bit of a film rant coming.
Fair.
We try not to bash the Lord of the Rings movies for bashing's sake, but I do want to point out that in the movie, this is a line spoken by Théoden to Aragorn.
Yeah, and of course in the book, it's Aragorn to Éomer, and it isn't coming out of the blue like it does in the films.
Right.
Aragorn is saying this in direct response to Éomer's comment in Chapter 2 just 3 days ago. 3 days. When Éomer says, "Return with what speed you may, and let our swords hereafter shine together."
That's right. It's another echo of a previous line, just like the Legolas and Gimli thing we saw just a moment ago. And we lose that in the films because it doesn't happen that way in the films, and it's given to different characters. And it's just another case of the movies taking a line from one character and giving it to another character. They do that a lot. Lots of times it works just fine, but sometimes it doesn't. And here I think it is one of those cases where it doesn't work as well.
I think you're right. We lose something when it just kind of comes out of the blue from Théoden as opposed to being a follow-up to that earlier Éomer-Aragorn conversation.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't have that context. It's like, let this be the hour when we draw swords together. Oh, I didn't know there was going to be an hour that we were going to draw swords together.
Yeah, we hadn't talked about that, sir.
We hadn't talked about this. I wasn't prepared to draw swords with you, but okay, cool.
I can see him now getting out a pencil and a piece of paper. All right, I'll draw a two-handed
claymore.
Sword. Yeah, that's right. I'll draw a claymore. You draw, a short sword.
Yeah. So yeah, that's part of it. We lose that context, but also here in the book, this is a key moment in the fellowship of Aragorn and Éomer. Here, they're forging a bond right now. This is them becoming brothers in arms. They're already becoming friends.
Yes.
But this is where they fight together. And this is that first step on the road to really kind of a brotherhood between the two of them that's going to unite them beyond the end of the War of the Ring when they're both kings.
That is absolutely true. You are absolutely spot on right here. I mean, Rohan and Gondor are allies, but you can always strengthen an alliance. And this is what ends up making that alliance so strong is Aragorn and
fighting
Éomer
side by side as friends,
together.
as equals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The movie ends up taking that fellowship moment and gives it to Théoden as a way to sort of heal the rift between he and Aragorn because they've been arguing about how to conduct this battle, which is also something that didn't happen.
That's right. Yeah. Because, and I think Devereaux talks about this a little bit, the movies have to introduce this conflict.
Of course.
I understand why it works in the movies.
Sure, cinematically, yeah.
Yeah. But the result of all that is that when Théoden says this to Aragorn, it's now more about repairing a damaged relationship between Aragorn and Théoden as opposed to building a relationship from the ground up, as we see here in the book. And I honestly think, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be crass, but I mean, as a character, Théoden is going to die. He's not going to be around for very long. And I think the character development for Aragorn and Éomer is a lot more important. They really need this moment.
I think they do. And, like you said, it's about that damaged relationship. But frankly, that's a relationship that didn't have to be damaged in the first place.
No, it didn't have to be. I mean, I understand why they did because, again, the movie, they have to introduce conflict. And
where was Gondor when the Westfold fell? Right about where it was before the Westfold fell, frankly. Just around the corner.
They don't actually have to ride to your aid the way you have to ride to theirs, for one thing.
Let me remind you what vassal means, by the way.
Right, exactly. It doesn't make Théoden look any better in the movie.
No.
Again, I know why they did it.
I know.
And I accept the fact that they did it. But you just lose... You lose something important for these two characters who are ultimately, I think, more important to the history of Middle-earth than I think Théoden is. And I'm not trying to downplay Théoden's role.
No.
I'm just saying that Théoden is at the end of his story. He's at the end of his life.
Éomer's at the beginning of his. Yeah.
Éomer's at the beginning, and Éomer really needs this moment with Aragorn. This is, as you said, this is what's going to forge that alliance for the Fourth Age.
Yeah. Huge. Well, movie rant over.
Yep.
The guys are now running along the deeping wall, up the steps to the outer court of the Hornburg, where they get a handful of stout swordsmen.
Yeah, it's a distinct difference from the film where it was just Aragorn and Gimli, wasn't it?
Right. It was just two guys coming out there, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Toss the dwarf and everything.
Oh, good. Yeah. So the guys get to this postern door, and I want to just talk about it real briefly. This is a common but very important architectural feature of fortifications.
Yeah, and like the book describes, they're often small, they're somewhat hidden from the besiegers, and the purpose of this door is basically to function as a sally port. It's a way for the defenders to be able to get out and make a sortie on those besieging the fortification.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, you want it small. You want it to be something that the besiegers can't easily see, don't know about.
Exactly. Either can't see or can't really get to. Maybe you put it next to a protruding tower that would, rain down enfilade fire.
Yeah.
That would make it impossible to get in there. So the idea of a sortie, though, that's exactly what Aragorn and Éomer and the stout swordsmen accompanying them are doing. They're running along this narrow path from the postern door to the gate so they can attack the men with the ram.
That's right.
So we get the sword names. I love that moment.
Oh, the sword names.
Oh, Guthwina and Duril.
I got to do a little word nerdery on Guthwina, of course.
Of course you do, yeah.
This comes from Old English Guth, meaning war or battle, and Wina, which means friend.
Mm-hmm.
Parma Eldalambron 17.
Oh, good.
Been a while since I've gotten that one out. Glosses it as comrade, friend in war, which is, let's face it, pretty good name for a sword.
Yeah, comrade, friend in war.
Yeah.
Parma Eldalambron 17.
Got to bring out some Parma Eldalambron 17.
Do you put Parma Eldalambron 17 on your pizza? I know I do. Little grated Parma Eldalambron.
Little Parma Eldalambron, a little bit of hot pepper. Yeah.
All right.
Now, we've talked about Andúril before.
We have.
What I just noticed when you were reading just now, the men of Rohan recognize Andúril.
They do. I know. I thought the same
thing. They know
thing.
this blade. They know the story of the blade that was broken. And that shouldn't surprise us too much. It's a very important story from Middle-earth history. But it's not their story. It's not a Rohan story. It's a Gondor story.
It wasn't a surprise when Éomer understood about it, right? When he meets the three hunters in the plains of Rohan. But he's Éomer. He's high in command. He knows his history. He's a learned man, so to speak.
And he's also got some Gondorian heritage.
That's right. He absolutely does, yeah.
But yeah, you wouldn't expect the rank and file guys necessarily to know this sword, but they do. They know this story. And this is like legend coming to life for them.
That's amazing.
Pretty cool moment. All right, so Aragorn and Éomer and their little detachment of guys, they attack the flank of the wild men who have to now drop the ram to defend themselves and fight, but they get wiped out pretty quickly.
Yes, they do.
And the accompanying orcs retreat.
Yeah. And one of the reasons they got wiped out was their shield wall was broken. Remember we talked about that last week.
That's
Here
right.
we get the wall of their shields was broken as by a lightning stroke.
That's right.
When that happens, it's all over, and they do end up getting swept away. But this is, once again, another good time to go back to Devereaux's blog for both a comparison with the film sortie and to talk about the realities of this kind of battle. After rightly pointing out the silliness about the film requiring a leap over a chasm to get to this spot, he points out that the sally in the books is more realistic. There is no leaping over a dangerous chasm, and the sally consists of more than just two people. Instead, it is Aragorn, Éomer, Gimli, and a small company of Rohirrim swordsmen. Whereas Aragorn and Gimli in the film actually hold the gate against a continuous attack while it is repaired, the book is a bit more realistic. The sudden terror of the onset of the sally causes the enemies at the ram to flee, creating a momentary lull in the battle during which the sally party can return inside the gate and reinforce it. That a sally such as this, catching an enemy focused on the task before them in the flank, would panic and scatter them in this way is no surprise. Humans fight battle in a terrible balance of fear. It does not take much of a sudden shock to send them running, even if just for the moment, especially when they are so poorly trained and led as Saruman's host. Ding! Just another reminder.
Once again, just beating up on Saruman's generalship.
Terrible leadership. Yeah. He makes some really good points. Like, you raised this army, man. I mean, you literally built this army.
You literally grew these things in vats, if the movie's to be believed.
Yeah. So there's no excuse. Yeah. No excuse. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway.
It's a great series. Again, I know we keep talking about it. Folks, you got to check it out. It's a fantastic series.
Yeah. I'm going to have you pick up shortly after that as they assess the damage, really, done by the rams.
All right. To make up for my very long reading earlier, I've got kind of a short one here.
Yes, you do.
We did not come too soon, said Aragorn, looking at the gates. Their great hinges and iron bars were wrenched and bent. Many of their timbers were cracked. The doors will not withstand another such battering. Yet we cannot stay here beyond the walls to defend them, said Éomer. Look! He pointed to the causeway. Already a great press of orcs and men were gathering again beyond the stream. Arrows whined and skipped on the stones about them. Come, we must get back and see what we can do to pile stone and beam across the gates within. Come now.
All right, that's what we'll do then. First, they stop at the gates, and we get this description of the weather before the paragraph you read. The thunder off in the distance now, and the lightning is far to the south, so we're seeing the weather change. The wind is blowing from the north. That's, again, why the clouds are off to the south.
Mm-hmm.
Clouds are breaking. Now the moon is getting to be visible. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at the damage, and, they realize just how close they came to complete disaster.
Oh,
I mean, these gates were about to give. The hinges are wrenched. They're bent. The timbers are broken.
Yeah, I mean, I can hear Scotty now. She cannot take much more, Captain.
Yeah. I may not know Star Trek, but I know that one.
Oh,
I got that
Scotty's
reference.
there. Scotty's all over the place, yeah.
I'm like the Captain America gif. I understood that reference.
I like that. That's a good one. I understand that reference.
Now, interestingly, this line of Aragorn's about the doors notwithstanding another battering, this was actually left out of all editions before, get this, 2004.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Hammond and Skull send us to the War of the Ring, where Christopher tells us that this line was in the final manuscript, but was left out of the typescript that followed. Christopher argues that there's nothing in his father's manuscript to suggest that they should have been removed, and he believes that it was an error.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, otherwise, who is Éomer talking to when he says, yet we cannot stay here beyond the walls to defend them?
Right, yeah, why yet?
Yeah.
But it looks like the enemy is regrouping.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like they might be able to recover that ram and start trying again. So
Yeah.
we better go back inside and go reinforce the gates from the inside.
Yeah,
Right
as quick
now.
as possible. That's
Yeah.
right. Right now. They turned and ran. At that moment, some dozen orcs that had lain motionless among the slain leaped to their feet and came silently and swiftly behind. Two flung themselves to the ground at Éomer's heels, tripped him, and in a moment they were on top of him. But a small dark figure that none had observed sprang out of the shadows and gave a hoarse shout, Baruch Khazad! Khazad Imenu! An axe swung and swept back. Two orcs fell headless. The rest fled. Éomer struggled to his feet, even as Aragorn ran back to his aid. The postern was closed again. The iron door was barred and piled inside with stones. When all were safe within, Éomer turned. I thank you, Gimli, son of Glóin, he said. I did not know that you were with us in the sortie, but oft the unbidden guest proves the best company. How came you there? I followed you to shake off sleep, said Gimli, but I looked on the hillmen and they seemed overlarge for me, so I sat beside a stone to see your swordplay. I shall not find it easy to repay you, said Éomer. There may be many a chance ere the night is over, laughed the dwarf, but I am content. Till now I have hewn naught but wood since I left Moria. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
All right. I will reluctantly go back to the beginning of that passage.
Okay, all right.
And talk about that first. So as they're turning and leaving, suddenly we see about a dozen orcs who've been lying there playing possum, getting up and sneaking behind. And they trip Éomer.
Seriously.
I mean, they take him down. They're about to get the better of him.
Mm-hmm.
But then, oh man.
Oh.
The moment. Such a great moment. Gimli comes out shouting, Baruch Khazad, Khazad Imenu.
I love that moment. Oh,
so great.
Oh, those tricksy orcs are going to get what's coming to them. This, by the way, is why you see in all the movies them, after a battle, the guys who won going around poking holes in all the dead people.
Yeah, for sure.
To make sure they're dead.
Make sure those guys are dead. Absolutely.
Yeah, would have been useful here, but in fairness, they didn't have time.
They didn't have time. Yeah, the battle's not over.
Back in. Got to reinforce the gates. They're getting shot at. So yeah. Now the Baruch Khazad Imenu. We have to talk about this, right?
Oh yeah.
We know that Appendix F tells us the dwarves never reveal their language to others. quote, it had become a tongue of lore rather than a cradle speech, and they tended it and guarded it as a treasure of the past. Well, we also read that it only appears in place names that Gimli mentions, and this moment, which Appendix F explicitly says was not secret and had been heard on many a field since the world was young. I love that. It's translated as axes of the dwarves are upon you.
Yeah, so Christopher Tolkien is actually able to elaborate a little bit more in The War of the Ring, where he says that at some point after the publication of Lord of the Rings, Tolkien began on an analysis of all fragments of other languages, Quenya, Sindarin, Khuzdul, the Black Speech, found in the book. But unhappily, before he had reached the end of Fellowship of the Ring, the notes, at the outset full and elaborate, had diminished to largely uninterpretable jottings. In these jottings, though, Christopher says that Baruch, he here translated as axes without further comment. I Menu is analyzed as Aya Menu, but the meanings are not clearly legible. That Aya is likely upon, and that Menu is the accusative plural you. Of course, he doesn't need to point out the obvious. Khazad, we know, is dwarvish for dwarves, plural. Just like Khazad-dûm, the mansions of the dwarves.
That's right. Well, Gimli goes ahead and chops off a couple of orc heads because, well, Gimli.
That's what he does. It's what he's known for.
That's what he does. You need some orc heads chopped. I'm here. I'm your man.
That's right.
So the rest run away while Éomer gets up and gives Aragorn that look like, dude, where were you? I mean.
Yeah, I know, right.
All right.
But then they get back behind the postern door, which we now learn is iron and barred from inside.
Which you'd expect. Again, talking about what a postern door is for. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then Éomer thanks Gimli. You know, he acknowledges, like, well, hey, we didn't even know you'd come with us. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And interestingly, he uses the word sortie, which is, again, when the defenders attack those besieging the defensive fortification.
Right.
Interesting, though, because it's actually a word derived from French, and we don't always see French-derived words in Rohirric speech.
Yeah, it is interesting when we see that. And then I like that he uses this great proverb, which has to have some sort of Rohirric flavor to it. Off the unbidden guest proves the best company.
That's a cool proverb.
Yeah. It really is. That really is. And he asks how he got there.
Yeah. And Gimli's explanation is...
Yeah.
I don't even know how much of an explanation it is. It's fun.
It is.
It's like it basically just like came as a bit of an adrenaline rush. Like I was getting tired.
Yeah.
Nothing better to do. Just wanted to keep myself awake, you know. Just basically like, you know, I ran out of Monster energy drinks and I decided to come out and actually, you know, maybe fight some monsters.
Oh, nicely done. Monster
Thank
energy
you.
drinks, monsters. Yeah.
But, you know, the hillmen were too big. So I just kind of hung back and watched.
Yeah,
you know?
well, not gonna tackle that one, right?
Yeah.
Well, Éomer, of course, basically says, look, I owe you one.
Yeah.
And Gimli's fine. He's laughing about it. But he has this line about hewing naught but wood since Moria. Let's talk about that a little.
Yeah, well, going back to Christopher Tolkien and The War of the Ring, he acknowledges that this raises a curious point.
I love the way he says that. A curious point.
Yes, it's a polite way of putting it, because he says it is clearly inconsistent with Legolas's words in The Departure of Boromir, when he and Gimli come upon Aragorn beside Boromir's body near Parthgalen. We have hunted and slain many orcs in the woods.
Yeah.
Christopher acknowledges that there isn't an explanation for this, saying it is simply an inconsistency never observed.
Until that is, Christopher Tolkien pointed it out. And now we've pointed it out, so thousands.
So now lots of people have observed it now.
Now, Hammond and Skull do give us a little bit more. They say that when they were preparing the text of the 2004 edition of The Lord of the Rings, this sort of definitive text, it was decided that Gimli's statement was too famous to be omitted, and that if Moria were amended to Parthgalen, it would suggest too great a bloodthirstiness for Gimli, since the latter event was only a week before. Yeah. Oh, if you not but woods,
it's been a whole week since I've killed anybody. Yeah.
I'm chomping at the bit. Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, Moria was 2 months before, so yeah, you're right. The line is kind of iconic. You can't get rid of it, and you can't amend it to say Parthgalen. So
you just got to leave it.
Just leave it and hope that most people don't notice.
And you know, look, it's dialogue, so it could just be an exaggeration. You know?
Little hyperbole.
Yeah, I've barely killed anybody since
barely killed anyone. That's right.
What about that one time? Oh, those guys.
Those guys. But they had it coming, you know.
Yeah, not talking about those guys.
That was nothing. They were easy.
Right.
I didn't even get any XP for them. They were like under level.
They were low level mobs, man. They were yard trash.
That is great stuff. I absolutely love that passage. I mean, I just want to hang out there
Yeah.
forever, but
Oh, yeah.
we're going to move on, and we're going to have you read the next section here. We've got the ladders and ropes. This is going to be interesting.
All right. The sky now was quickly clearing, and the sinking moon was shining brightly. But the light brought little hope to the riders of the mark. The enemy before them seemed to have grown rather than diminished, and still more were pressing up from the valley through the breach. The sortie upon the rock gained only a brief respite. The assault on the gates was redoubled. Against the deepening wall, the hosts of Isengard roared like a sea. Orcs and hillmen swarmed about its feet from end to end. Ropes with grappling hooks were hurled over the parapet faster than men could cut them or fling them back. Hundreds of long ladders were lifted up. Many were cast down in ruin, but many more replaced them, and orcs sprang up them like apes in the dark forests of the south. Before the wall's foot, the dead and broken were piled like shingle in a storm. Ever higher rose the hideous mounds, and still the enemy came on. The men of Rohan grew weary. All their arrows were spent, and every shaft was shot. Their swords were notched, and their shields were riven. 3 times Aragorn and Éomer rallied them, and 3 times Andúril flamed in a desperate charge that drove the enemy from the wall.
Oh, goodness. Those 3 rallies must have been something to see, huh?
Oh, yeah, must have been.
We'll get to that. I know we have to go back to the beginning of the passage, but that I'm just seeing Aragorn realizing how close they are to losing.
How desperate it's getting, and just trying to keep them going, trying anything.
Yeah. Everything's been shot. I mean, they're out of ammo. They're down to just melee. Their swords are notched. Their shields riven. This is desperation time. And the rally that these leaders bring, we talked about that. The leadership of Aragorn and Éomer, so important here.
And for all of this, these forces just keep coming. I mean, they're climbing over the bodies of their fallen comrades now.
Which we know orcs do, right? Tolkien reading day, they bridged the river with their dead, to get to Hurin,
That's right.
Oh.
And even Dunlendings, the Dunlendings aren't,
No, it's true.
Are fine just sort of tiptoeing over these fallen orc bodies.
Yeah, not a problem.
Brutal moment.
It really is a brutal moment. Oh, goodness. So let's go back to the beginning. We get the brief Gimli Legolas moment that you didn't read, a moment as they start their contest. It is now the bottom of the first. Legolas is up 20-2.
He's got a pretty big lead.
Yeah, he does.
I don't know if Gimli's going to come back. We'll have to see.
Yeah, we've got to figure out, first of all, your relief pitching. I mean, if it's already the bottom of the first and you're down 20-2, you got to stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So we return to the battle, and then we see a change in the weather. Right?
Yeah. Only now it's of no help. I mean,
true.
Okay, great. The weather's changed, but it seems that even more foes are coming up the valley, and now the gates are under assault again, and the host is roaring against the wall at the very same time.
Yeah, and now they've got ropes and grappling hooks, and this is interesting. Hundreds of long ladders. Hundreds.
That's a lot of ladders.
That's a lot.
You're not going to be able to get any more at Home Depot now. They are out. They are all out.
They bought every one. They went to every Home Depot and Lowe's in the area. Bought all the
Ace
ladders.
Hardware, even. They're all gone.
Extension ladders. They got the little ones. They got the big ones.
Step ladders. You probably still get a step ladder. I think they knew better than to bother with those.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the collection of unmitigated pedantry. That would be the blog, not our first season of episodes, which some might say is also a collection of unmitigated pedantry. We're going to see what Devereaux has to say about this. Oh, surprise. One of the blog entries is literally titled Ladders or Chaos. So nice. I think we know where he's headed with this one.
Yeah.
He points out, and I love this, Saruman has had years to consider his assault, something the Rohirrim are well aware of. If his army hasn't trained and prepared for this, that is a terrible planning oversight. If they have trained and prepared for this, and this is the best he could do, then that is an even deeper failing in both developing capabilities, but also in strategic judgment for opening this war so unprepared, because this is almost a textbook course on how not to assault a fortress.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that we point out, he's not criticizing Tolkien.
Not at all, no.
He's actually pointing out how Tolkien is showing us how woefully unprepared Saruman is for this sort of battle.
Exactly.
He's pointing to Tolkien having knowledge of it and being able to show how bad Saruman is at this.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when we compare it to Sauron's assault on Minas Tirith in a couple more seasons.
Indeed, yeah.
Devereaux actually says, I don't think this is error by Tolkien so much as an intentional contrast between Saruman's arrogant presumption of strength and Sauron's actual strength.
That is a good point. And he's right. When we get to Minas Tirith in a couple of seasons, we'll see that in spades, as they say.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, for a moment, let's go and talk about ladders. Ladder assaults, known as escalades, so go drive your Cadillac SUV and remember it's named after a ladder assault.
There you go.
They definitely happened, but they were considered hasty assaults and were usually launched early on with the hope that the defender was unaware and the attackers could secure the wall quickly.
Right.
But as Devereaux says, there would almost always be a backup plan because ladder assaults usually failed. If you could do anything other than a ladder assault, use a siege tower, have a covered ram, sap into the walls, build a ramp over the wall, bribe a traitor, anything, you did that instead.
That's right. And there's a reason they almost always failed.
Yeah.
Attackers are exceedingly vulnerable during a climb.
Yeah.
Maybe they can keep their shields over their head, but they can't also access their weapon at the same time.
No.
So if and when they do get to the top climbing with a shield over their head, they're going to be at a massive disadvantage.
Right.
They're on unstable footing. They're only able to use one hand because, holding onto a ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And they're fighting against an opponent on solid ground, behind cover, and ready to fight, and also probably able to and probably actually dropping rocks on them.
Yeah, quite clearly. So the movie, troubling in that particular matter, but...
Well, yeah, when you've actually got the orcs on the ladders as they're raising them up.
Yeah.
Which just increases the weight of them.
Which, I was going to say, that's a lever. Do you guys know how levers work?
Right. Yeah.
That's not going to happen when you're pushing it forward.
Yeah.
You have to pull it in order to even have a chance. But yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's just not possible. Back to the text, though, we get this really interesting line about the orcs springing up like apes in the dark forest of the south. Now, I just want to highlight that for a moment. We're not going to discuss it right now because we have a question in Bartleman's bag on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And then we get the pile of dead rising into mounds at the base of the wall. We talked about this a little bit already, but
yeah,
if you're wondering why the dead are piling up at the base of the wall, it's because ladder attacks usually fail.
Saruman, figure this one out, man. So then we get that brief return to the good guys that is such a powerful moment. They're really tired. They're exhausted. They're out of ammo. Their shields are damaged. Their swords are damaged. Mm-hmm. Oh.
And yet, again, you talked about this. We've talked a few times about this, the great leadership shown by Aragorn and Éomer.
Yeah.
And here it is again. They rally behind Aragorn and Éomer 3 times.
Yeah. This actually makes me think of something else that we haven't really touched on much about Saruman's leadership of this army. He's not here.
Yeah.
This is very much that we've talked about chateau generals, right?
He's very much hanging back at his chateau.
Yeah.
Ordering the assault from way behind the line. Yeah.
Way behind. He's totally safe, right? He's not, and he's not even close enough to really be getting current information.
Right.
To make strategic or tactical decisions. Yeah.
And we don't see, something Devereaux points out quite a few times, we don't see any evidence that there are orc officers calling commands.
Doesn't appear to be an officer corps or a structure of leadership or anything like that.
Right. Or even like NCOs, sergeants or anything like that.
No. You get the one guy standing in a rock raising his sword. That's as close as you get. I don't know that counts.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah. Well, I'm going to pick up exactly where you left off. And this is another. I get to read Dwarvish again. How fun is that?
Good for you. This is good.
I didn't mean to give myself both examples.
No, it's all good. Do it.
Then a clamor arose in the deep behind. Orcs had crept like rats through the culvert through which the stream flowed out. There they had gathered in the shadow of the cliffs until the assault above was hottest and nearly all the men of the defense had rushed to the wall's top. Then they sprang out. Already some had passed into the jaws of the deep and were among the horses, fighting with the guards. Down from the wall leapt Gimli with a fierce cry that echoed in the cliffs. "Khazad! Khazad!" He soon had work enough. "Aye, oi!" he shouted. "The orcs are behind the wall! Aye, oi! Come, Legolas! That are enough for us both! Khazad Imenu!" Whoa.
Awesome.
That is such a moment.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, a moment ago, we saw some tricksy orcs playing dead, right?
Yeah.
So they've crawled through the culvert and they've actually waited to spring out, which for some reason just reminds me of Shawshank Redemption. I don't know why. Imagine they're like kind of crawling through the the sewage like Andy Dufresne. I don't know.
And then just waiting to
right.
It is interesting that they waited, and it's like they did at the gate, right? They played dead.
Yeah.
They waited until they had their backs turned, and then they get up.
Yeah. And this works for them. Now they're near the deep itself, which is where the civilians and the food are.
This is huge. We're going to see next week that this culvert is a natural spot for the besieging force to attack. Remember when we mentioned Éomer reinforcing what he saw as the weak spot? I think he saw that the culvert is a weak spot.
Yeah.
Normally, you would only see a couple of them crawling out at a time, and you'd be able to take them down. They took advantage of the crazy battle above to gather in numbers, and
got
then
a whole bunch of them in there.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's smart move.
Yeah, quite.
So now Gimli sees his moment, right? I mean, this is the time for him to jump in. It's the orcs. It's not the hillmen. These are more his size. Kazad, the dwarves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the elves, because he's going to call for Legolas' help.
Yeah.
There's enough for both of us.
That's right.
Kazad Menu. And, Gimli's looking for a chance to catch up to him. Remember, he's down 20-2.
He's got a big hole to climb out of. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, Legolas won't be coming. He's going to be a little busy, as we'll see.
That's right.
And that's where I'm going to have you pick up.
All right. Gamling the Old looked down from the Hornburg, hearing the great voice of the dwarf above all the tumult. "The orcs are in the deep," he cried. "Helm! Helm! Forth Helmingus!" he shouted, as he leaped down the stair from the rock with many men of Westfold at his back. Their onset was fierce and sudden, and the orcs gave way before them. Ere long they were hemmed in the narrows of the gorge, and all were slain or driven shrieking into the chasm of the deep, to fall before the guardians of the hidden caves. 21! cried Gimli. He hewed a two-handed stroke and laid the last orc before his feet. "Now my count passes Master Legolas again." "We must stop this rat-hole," said Gamling. "Dwarves are said to be cunning folk with stone. Lend us your aid, master." "We do not shape stone with battle-axes, nor with our fingernails," said Gimli. "But I will help as I may." They gathered such small boulders and broken stones as they could find to hand, and under Gimli's direction the Westfold men blocked up the inner end of the culvert, until only a narrow outlet remained. Then the deeping stream, swollen by the rain, churned and fretted in its choked path, and spread slowly in cold pools from cliff to cliff.
Well, yeah, that's why you can't just dam it up the whole time. You'd end up with a lake behind the
Right,
deeping
exactly.
wall.
Yep.
So Gimli's vocal fighting style is what draws Gamling's attention, and he, of course, in turn comes with many men.
That's pretty cool. I love the fact that Gamling kind of notices, this crazy dwarf is down there.
That's right.
I'm gonna go down there. He calls to his men, Forth Helmingus, which I like. It parallels Forth Aerlingus, but the fact that this is a reference to the Helmingus, that tells us that apparently the people of the Westfold consider themselves, at least partly, the people of Helm, right?
Yeah.
Maybe this is a slightly different clan than other parts of Rohan. We don't know for sure, but they definitely seem to align themselves with Helm.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine that they are a separate,
could be descended from him,
Mm-hmm. Could be some of his descendants. That's right. I mean, we know his sons died. We know his daughter did not.
Right.
He had one, and we know that she did not become queen because we talked about the whole question of, the inheritance of the title. But they could be descended. And of course, there are lots of them, the orcs, that is, as we often see, but they don't do well when faced with a fierce attack.
That's right. So they get trapped. They're stuck in the gorge, and pretty quickly they're wiped out.
Yeah. And Gimli's pleased with himself. 19 kills, so he's got 21 now, and he thinks he's ahead. I love that. Of course, he's not, but we don't know that yet.
He doesn't know yet.
No. Gambling, though, does a little bit of dwarvish stereotyping. You're good with rocks, right? I love that.
Hey.
It'd be like somebody talking to us and, saying, well, you know somebody, right? I need somebody who could break a kneecap. You're Italian, right? I mean, what are you talking about, man?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I don't know anybody, except that Gimli actually is good with rocks.
Gimli's really good with rocks, just not with he doesn't have his tools. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he doesn't have his pick and, his pickaxes and mattocks and all that stuff that he needs. I mean, I can't do it with my fingers, man.
No. I mean, I'm strong, but I'm not that strong.
All right, but hey, look, he's game. Yeah. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah. So at least they pick up some rocks and they dam up the culvert. And like I said earlier, it's not something they can do long term thanks to the deeping stream.
No, but it's a good temporary stopgap, literally.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is.
And so then they go back up onto the deeping wall. Gimli looking to confirm his lead in the game with Legolas.
So in this section that we didn't read, there's a lull in the fight thanks to these amazing actions of Gimli and Gamling. Mm-hmm. And they find Legolas with Aragorn and Éomer.
Yeah. And then that's when Legolas breaks the bad news. You know what? I'm up to 24 now. But look, hey, Gimli's gone from 20 to 2 to 24 to 21, so he's only down by 3, and there's still plenty of time on the clock.
I think he could kick a field goal to tie pretty easily here. He just needs
Yeah.
to hold this one last possession, yeah.
I'm imagining him kicking a field goal with like an orc head.
I know, because that's exactly how he'd do it. Yeah.
It's good.
All right. As much as we'd like to read everything, we are going to skip a little bit more. And this is the last reading for this section of the chapter. And we're going to see the arrival of dawn, or close to the arrival of dawn, and get a little bit of insight into the Dunlendings.
Yes.
Aragorn looked at the pale stars and at the moon, now sloping behind the western hills that enclosed the valley. "This is a night as long as years," he said. "How long will the day tarry?" "Dawn is not far off," said Gimli, who had now climbed up beside him. "But dawn will not help us, I fear." "Yet dawn is ever the hope of men," said Aragorn. "But these creatures of Isengard, these half-orcs and goblin men that the foul craft of Saruman has bred, they will not quail at the sun," said Gimli. "And neither will the wild men of the hills. Do you not hear their voices?" "I hear them," said Éomer, "but they are only the scream of birds and the bellowing of beasts to my ears." "Yet there are many that cry in the Dunland tongue," said Gimli. "I know that tongue. It is an ancient speech of men, and once was spoken in many western valleys of the Mark. Hark! They hate us, and they are glad, for our doom seems certain to them. 'The king! The king!' they cry. 'We will take their king! Death to the Forgoil! Death to the Strawheads! Death to the robbers of the north!' Such names they have for us. Not in 500 years have they forgotten their grievance, that the lords of Gondor gave the mark to Eor the Young, and made alliance with him. That old hatred Saruman has inflamed. They are fierce folk when roused. They will not give way now for dusk or dawn, until Théoden is taken, or they themselves are slain." "Nonetheless, day will bring hope to me," said Aragorn. "Is it not said that no foe has ever taken the Hornburg, if men defended it?" "So the minstrels say," said Éomer. "Then let us defend it, and hope," said Aragorn. Let us indeed hope. Yes.
Yes, indeed. A little bit of Aure and Tulava implied there.
Very much, yeah. Day will come again, and day will bring hope. That's a very good tie-in. Yeah.
Well, thank you. So, yeah, going back to the beginning, the battle's continuing, rises again, but the Hornburg holds, even with the gates ruined.
Mm-hmm.
And Aragorn observes, this is such a poignant moment. This night has gone on forever. How long? How long will the day wait?
Sun's got to come, man. This night has lasted forever, it seems.
Yeah.
And Gamling's, honest about it. It's not going to be long now before dawn, but fat lot of good it'll do us, he says.
Yeah, but Aragorn, Mr. Estelle himself, he still has, himself.
Oh, no. I knew you were getting
He says, dawn is ever the hope of men. This is really, really important. I mean,
it is really important.
We saw all the way back in the Silmarillion how the rising of the sun was a symbol of hope for the first men.
Yes,
right?
It is a huge point there, because you're absolutely right. We get that directly in the text of chapter 12 in the Silmarillion of Men. It talks about when the men first awoke in the land of Hildorian, but the first sun arose in the west, and the opening eyes of men were turned towards it, and their feet, as they wandered over the earth, for the most part, strayed that way.
Yeah.
And that's what they were. They followed the sun. That's and I'm not going to start singing the song, but that's what they did.
Right.
Yeah. They were
Pretty
even called
awesome.
the children of the sun. That's one of the names. Certainly a lot nicer than inscrutable or the self-cursed or
the sickly,
the heavy-handed. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great moment. Aragorn knows his lore, and that's why he says, dawn is not just our hope now. Dawn has always been the hope of men.
Always been the hope of men.
And again, he knows his own family history with Hurin and Aure and Tulava.
Yes. Day will come again.
Yeah.
Man. But of course, Gamling's thinking in practical terms. He's not necessarily thinking about, ancient lore and the history of all of mankind. He's more concerned about the half-orcs and the goblin men. Dawn would be helpful if we were facing ordinary orcs, but these guys aren't going to be afraid of the sun.
Yeah, and not only them, but also the wild men of the hills. The Dunlendings, they're not going to be afraid of the sun. I mean, and don't forget, can you hear them? They're out there.
Yeah, and they're not just out there. They hate us. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Éomer says something very interesting. He says that he hears them, but he doesn't pick up on the language there. He says he hears animal noises.
Right. I mean, he's not even saying, I don't understand their language. He's saying, I don't even hear
I
it
don't
as
even
language.
hear language. I don't even hear words in that. Yeah.
That's really something, isn't it?
It is. It's kind of dehumanizes the Dunlendings in a way, you know?
A little bit, yeah. You know, Gamling, though, knows the Dunland tongue, right? Remember, we've talked about how this is a different part of Rohan. This is near the Westfold. Gamling knows the tongue. It was once spoken in areas of the Westfold, as you would expect it to be. This is the area that borders with Dunland. And so there's probably been some interaction in times of maybe relative peace, or even not, where that language would be heard.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
Yeah. And of course, then we get that glimpse into the Dunlendings that Gamling gives us, a little bit of history.
Yeah. And he tells us that, they're still angry that 500 years ago, half a thousand years.
Yeah.
Gondor gave this land to the Rohirrim, and they're still angry about that. And Saruman has inflamed that anger, and that's made them very dangerous indeed. I mean, they want to wipe us out.
Yeah. And they are not going to stop until either the king is taken or they are dead. They will do this. Yeah.
And I like that from Gamling because, it kind of rehumanizes the Dunlendings a little bit. Éomer is just like, oh, I just hear animal noises. And Gamling's like, no, these are people. And these people,
they're ticked.
They're after something. They're mad.
Yeah, they
This
are.
is a very human rage that they feel here.
Even if it has been inflamed, even if it has been artificially, stimulated. Yeah.
They've been sort of duped by Saruman, right?
Yeah, as we'll see next chapter, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, the grievances that they have are very real. And I think that's really, really fascinating that Gamling points that out.
So I think we'll probably talk a little bit more about this next week. I think it's fair to say that, as the original inhabitants of this land, they have some legitimate gripes with how they were treated by the Númenóreans. And we'll also find out a little bit more this week about their history that will give us a little bit of insight, I think. So, Sean, why don't you tell us something about their language?
Yeah, we'll start there. So we get this bit about death to the Forgoil. Now, what's Forgoil? Okay, well, in Appendix F on languages, we read this in the section on the languages of men. Wholly alien was the speech of the wild men of Druadan Forest. Alien too, or only remotely akin, was the language of the Dunlendings. These were a remnant of the peoples that had dwelt in the vales of the White Mountains in ages past. The dead men of Dunharrow were of their kin. But in the dark years others had removed to the southern dales of the Misty Mountains, and thence some had passed into the empty lands as far north as the Barrow Downs. From them came the men of Bree, but long before, these had become subjects of the north kingdom of Arnor and had taken up the Westron tongue. Only in Dunland did men of this race hold to their old speech and manners, a secret folk, unfriendly to the Dunedain, hating the Rohirrim. Of their language nothing appears in this book, save the name Forgoil, which they gave to the Rohirrim, meaning strawheads, it is said. Dunland and Dunlending are the names that the Rohirrim gave to them, because they were swarthy and dark-haired. There is thus no connection between the word Dun in these names and the Grey Elven word Dún, west.
But the early drafts of this part of the story tell us a little bit more. First, this passage about the speech of the Dunlendings shows something different. After Éomer talks about them sounding like animals, Aragorn is the one who says, "Yet among them are many that cry in the tongue of Westfold." He would then later change that to "in the Dunland tongue." And that is a speech of men and once was accounted good to hear, which is interesting. Gamling agrees with Aragorn in this early draft, saying that it is an ancient speech which was once common in the area, then adding, but now it is used in deadly hate.
That's very interesting. I mean, first of all, I note that, in both the early draft and the final draft, we have this bit where Éomer kind of dehumanizes them by saying, it just sounds like a bunch of animal noises to me. And then somebody else, either Gamling in the finished text or Gamling and Aragorn in the early draft, kind of rehumanizes them by saying, no, that's language.
Yeah.
But then there's an interesting difference here in Aragorn's observation about the language that they use. And we're going to talk about some of these differences between the different drafts next week when we get to the Parlay of Aragorn. So let's keep this all in mind. But let's talk a little bit more about the Dunlendings.
I think we should. In The Peoples of Middle-earth, that's volume 12 of the History of Middle-earth, we read about how some of the people living near the shore of Middle-earth were unfriendly to the Númenóreans. But we are told that this was, quote, not always due to the shadow, but in later days to the actions of the Númenóreans themselves. Thus, many of the forest dwellers of the shorelands south of the Ered Luin, especially in Minhiriath, were, as later historians recognized, the kin of the folk of Haleth. But they became bitter enemies of the Númenóreans because of their ruthless treatment and their devastation of the forests, and this hatred remained unappeased in their descendants, causing them to join with any enemies of Númenor. In the Third Age, their survivors were the people known in Rohan as the Dunlendings.
That is really fascinating. And I think we did talk about this maybe way back in season 1.
Yeah.
It's an interesting reminder, and that's probably what Aragorn is thinking of in that early draft when he says, look, their language used to be one that was good to hear.
Yeah.
They were Edain or kin of the Edain for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And what's interesting is we read earlier, what you pulled from Appendix F, that from those same people came the men of Bree.
Yeah.
The men of Bree are related to the Dunlendings.
Right.
And both of them are descendants of the folk of Haleth.
Yeah. Or kin of the folk of Haleth, maybe cousins or something. Yeah.
Right. Not direct descendants, because of course
Right.
the Edain would have gone over to Númenor. But yeah.
Right. All right. Well, now back to the text, because it's obvious that Aragorn knows a lot about the Dunlendings, and he probably knows a lot about their long feud with Rohan, but day will still bring hope to him.
Yes, it will.
And he asks, look, is it not said that if the fortress is defended, no foe has ever taken it?
I love that. Is it not said? Éomer acknowledges that's what the songs say. And that's just another reminder of something we've known from the beginning about the Rohirrims. They're a people of song.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Aragorn says something which is pretty important and worth paying attention to, the whole sentence. Let us defend it and hope.
That is so key, because this is another example, and we see this throughout Tolkien's Legendarium, of not merely hoping on its own. This is hope plus action.
That's right.
Let's hope and let's do something.
Yep, absolutely.
And what they do, we'll read next week. But in the meantime, it is also sung that no foe has ever taken the mailbag from Barliman.
Oh, there you go.
We are no foes. So let's see what we've got tonight. And after that, of course, the talk still continues all night long at the Prancing Pony.
That's right. Our awesome listener community keeps the conversation going in all of our social media spaces. At our common room on Facebook, you'll find comments, questions, corrections, and more on every episode, as well as updates from us throughout the week. Just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast on Facebook.
And be sure to follow the page and join the group. The page lets us keep you up to date on the latest happenings of the Prancing Pony Podcast, like the mood. But the group gives you a really great chance to discuss Tolkien with your fellow listeners.
And of course, we also have some really good discussions going on over on Reddit. You can find us there at r/prancingponypod. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, both with the handle @prancingponypod. And please, if you're enjoying the show, please share us and consider giving us a review on Apple Podcasts.
And if you want exclusive content like postscripts, full bonus episodes, live Discord events with Sean and me, and episodes without digital ads, then check out patreon.com/prancingponypod, where you can support the show by joining the fellowship of the podcast. Now, let's see what messages Barliman has brought to us tonight. Sean.
All right. Well, James F. wrote in with this, let's call it an amendment to an observation in episode 190. Whilst discussing the orc ape insult, now this is back when Grishnach called Ugluk an ape.
Yeah, look who's talking.
Right, exactly. James said, you mentioned there's no other textual evidence of primates in Middle-earth, but I happen to have picked up something. Then James copies and pastes here. Against the deeping wall, the hosts of Isengard roared like a sea. Orcs and hillmen swarmed about its feet from end to end. Ropes with grappling hooks were hurled over the parapet faster than men could cut them or fling them back. Hundreds of long ladders were lifted up. Many were cast down and ruined, but many more replaced them, and orcs sprang up them like apes in the dark forests of the south. James says clearly here, Tolkien says that apes exist in Middle-earth, I would say.
Yeah.
And if so, who made the apes? Yavanna, Melkor, etc. And what does that say about evolution in Middle-earth?
Oh, man.
Alan, you want to start?
Well, first, I would say if it doesn't have a tail, it's not a monkey, even if it has a monkey kind of shape. If it doesn't have a tail, it's not a monkey. If it doesn't have a tail, it's not a monkey, it's an ape. Sorry.
Wow.
For all the VeggieTale fans out there.
Wow. That's a new one on me. That's funny.
I didn't sing it because, man, I'm not going to do that. But I just thought that's what came to mind. But I do think James is right about what Tolkien is saying here. This is not a reference to a non-existent creature in a mythological place, like the way Bilbo references the wild wereworms in the Last Desert.
Yeah.
This is clearly a real reference to a real animal in a real place. So I think we have to start there. But I guess that begs the question of how did they get there? So, Sean, back to you. What Vala made the apes?
Thanks.
Bouncy bounce.
Great. Yeah, let me call them all and find out. I'll just ask around.
Oh, man.
Nienda, was it you? Actually, no. All kidding aside, I think we do know which Vala made the apes. Yavanna appears to be the one responsible for the creation of animals.
Yeah.
So for this, let's go to of Aule and Yavanna in the Silmarillion. I'll pick up in the conversation between Manwë and Yavanna. This is when Yavanna has gone to Manwë, really concerned that the dwarves are going to wreck everything she's made.
Yeah.
And she asks, shall nothing that I have devised be free from the dominion of others?
Mm.
Well, good question, Yavanna. Manwë says, if thou hadst thy will, what wouldst thou reserve? Of all thy realm, what dost thou hold dearest? All have their worth, said Yavanna, and each contributes to the worth of the others. But the Kelvar can flee or defend themselves, whereas the Olvar that grow cannot.
Now, clearly, both the Kelvar and Olvar, then, are part of Yavanna's realm in the question that Manwë asks. Shall nothing that I have devised be free from the dominion of others? And then Manwë says, of all thy realm,
right?
What was that? So this is clearly her authority, and even Eru seems to agree. Later in the chapter, Manwë is telling Yavanna what Eru said to him. Do then any of the Valar suppose that I did not hear all the song, even the least sound of the least voice? Behold, when the children awake, then the thought of Yavanna will awake also, and it will summon spirits from afar, and they will go among the Kelvar and the Olvar, and some will dwell therein, and be held in reverence, and their just anger shall be feared. So, Eru isn't contradicting what Manwë said about Yavanna's realm, and is in fact agreeing. So, I think we know, but just as a side note, of course, the spirits among the Kelvar are the eagles, and those among the Olvar are the Ents.
Yeah, and in fact, we're told that the eagles were a case of collaboration when the thought of Yavanna and Manwë met in the music. But otherwise, yeah, animals are pretty much her thing.
Yeah.
So Yavanna seems to be the solid answer on this one. But what about the other question?
Oh, no.
What does this say about evolution in Middle-earth?
You're bouncing this one back to me.
I am bouncing this one right back to you, man. I don't know. Do we want to touch this one?
I have to admit, I at first I was like, let's just skip this part. But truth is, I don't have a problem tackling this because any answer we give is going to be purely speculative. So it's just an interesting conversation. We don't know for sure.
Yeah.
I will start by saying this, though, that whatever extent you think evolution plays in life on Earth, on a micro or macro scale, it's just not present in Middle-earth. I'm honestly going to suggest the opposite may be happening to some extent, right? As we often see with Tolkien, the better things are the older things, not the newer things. The current things are never as good as what came before. And then, of course, in terms of on the macro scale, we know that the elves simply rose from the sleep of Iluvatar by Cuiviénen, fully formed and self-realized, speaking with language, naming things nearly right away. They didn't evolve from a previous species. And as I mentioned a minute ago, they grow less potent, not more. We read that in the beginning, the elder children of Iluvatar were stronger and greater than they have since become. And that's pretty consistent with this medieval style of literature where it's always better in the past.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the idea of, it's almost going back to like Hesiod and the idea of like the ages of man, where you've got like the golden age and then the silver age, and it gets worse with each generation. It gets
worse, right? Not better.
And you're right. And it's not just elves either. I mean, men too are said to have just simply awoken.
Yeah.
We read that at the first rising of the sun, the younger children of Iluvatar awoke in the land of Hildorien, in the eastward regions of Middle-earth.
Yeah.
Even the dwarves just awoke. They awoke in different places rather than in a single location like Cuiviénen or Hildorien. And we're explicitly told that the dwarves are not even improved. Iluvatar tells Aule, in no other way will I amend thy handiwork, and as thou hast made it, so shall it be. So, yeah, I don't think that there's any evidence of the process of evolution, like you said, either on the micro or the macro level, in Tolkien's world,
right?
In Middle-earth.
Right. And that makes sense theologically as well. Again, Tolkien's strong Catholic beliefs fit with that. The doctrine of the modern Catholic Church does seem to see creationism and evolution as not mutually exclusive alternatives. But the Catholic Church in Tolkien's time was very different.
Yeah.
At the time, the governing decree was from Pope Pius X in 1909. And that said that the first chapters in Genesis were literally historical in regards to the creation of all things by God at the beginning of time, the special creation of man, the formation of the first woman from the first man, and the unity of the human race.
And look, that's not to say that we have any idea what Tolkien himself believed. We can't possibly know. But we do know that he was a Catholic, and we do know that he made efforts to shape his subcreation in a way that was, well, if not necessarily reflective of his personal worldview at all points, at least not inconsistent with it.
That's a fair way to put it. And he does seem to have held to some literal beliefs about Genesis as well, personally. In a letter to Christopher Tolkien in 1945, published as number 96 in Carpenter's collection, he has some interesting things to say. He says, first, quote, I think most Christians, except the very simple and uneducated, or those protected in other ways, have been rather bustled and hustled now for some generations by the self-styled scientists, and they've sort of tucked Genesis into a lumber room of their mind as not very fashionable furniture. A bit ashamed to have it about the house, don't you know, when the bright, clever young people called. I mean, of course, even the Fidelis, who did not sell it secondhand or burn it as soon as modern taste began to sneer. I love that. Oh, a bit ashamed to have it about the house, don't you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And later in that same letter, he says that partly as a development of my own thought on my lines and work, technical and literary, partly in contact with CSL, that's Lewis, of course,
Right.
and in various ways, not least the firm guiding hand of Alma Mater Ecclesia, that's Latin for Bountiful Mother Church, I do not now feel either ashamed or dubious on the Eden myth.
And he puts that in air quotes too, which is
He does, yeah.
kind of important. And while he goes on to concede that Genesis doesn't have the same historicity as the New Testament regarding the contemporary nature of the manuscripts, he does add, but certainly there was an Eden on this very unhappy earth.
Yeah. And there's one more thing that suggests Tolkien had some skepticism about evolution. And this is something that we talked about all the way back in episode 2.
Oh, wow. Only 206 episodes ago.
I know, right? Remember the poem Mythopoeia?
Oh, yeah.
And we did talk about this in that second episode. There are a few lines in there where Tolkien says, I will not walk with your progressive apes.
That's right.
Erect and sapient. Before them gapes the dark abyss to which their progress tends.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Well,
that's pretty clear.
That's pretty clear. And in case you're not sure, the progressive apes are a reference to evolution. I mean, look at that phrase, erect and sapient.
Yeah.
That's a pretty clear reference to the extinct human species Homo erectus and, of course, the modern species Homo sapiens, which is us.
That's right.
Now, it's certainly possible that Tolkien's not walking with those progressive apes in the poem, it may not mean that he rejected the idea of evolution entirely, but just rejected the tendency towards nihilism that, well, he believed a purely materialistic view. You know, think of it as evolution without creationism. If, as you're saying, Alan, the Catholic Church now has ways to reconcile the two.
Right.
He just believed that a purely materialistic view of it just leads towards this dark abyss.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly something that he's saying in that poem. And maybe it's nothing more than that.
True.
I don't really know. I don't really want to try too hard to guess what he really believed in his heart. But I recognize that there are a couple of ways to read that. But it does seem like he had some skepticism about evolution, if nothing else.
That's fair to say. And then combine that with what the text does and doesn't say. It seems like it's really not a stretch to say that based on his own beliefs, based on the medieval style of his storytelling, Tolkien just simply didn't incorporate the idea of evolution of the species in Middle-earth.
Yeah, I think that conclusion is pretty much inescapable, honestly, based on what we know from the Silmarillion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do we have time for one more?
Well, I'll be pushing it, but I think we do. Should be relatively quick. Marcus B. writes in and says something that has been discussed a couple of times now in Season 5 has been the incredible feat of Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli's chase of the orcs who captured Merry and Pippin. Indeed, Aragorn predicts it will be considered a marvel, and Éomer suggests their incredible feat will be recognized in songs by the Rohirrim. But each step of the way during this miraculous chase, the orcs were ahead of the hunters. It seems that the orc column had a lead of several hours while Aragorn and company regrouped and gave Boromir his final honors, but even then, they never really did come close to catching up with the orcs. So I'm wondering, if Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas' chase was considered an incredible marvel, what would people have thought of the orcs' own pace? Are orcs naturally this fast when on a mission? Or was the urgency of their mission propelling them to some incredible pace as well? That is an interesting question, and I'm going to let you start, Sean.
Oh, man. All right. We got a couple of hard ones today.
We did, yeah. Can you stop picking them?
You know, I'm looking at them. I'm like, yeah, these seem pretty easy. Well, nope, not this time. Okay, look, we know that Morgoth could spend his spirit, placing power in his servants, right? We actually read in Of the Flight of the Noldor that, for now, more than in the days of Autumno, ere his pride was humbled, his hatred devoured him, and in the domination of his servants and the inspiring of them with lust of evil, he spent his spirit. Well, in an even better illustration of his power, in Of Beren and Luthien of the Silmarillion, we read that he put his power upon Carcharoth, and that as he lay at the feet of Morgoth, the fire and anguish of hell entered into him, and he became filled with a devouring spirit, tormented, terrible, and strong. And Morgoth set him to lie unsleeping before the doors of Angband.
There's a power. So Morgoth could inspire his servants by investing with his own power. We've known that. And it does seem that Sauron, through pouring himself into the ring, was able to do something similar. But what about Saruman? He's an Ainu, sure, but he's no Vala. He's certainly not Morgoth. He's an incarnate Maya with limitations, so he's not even Sauron in that sense. But are the limitations inherent to his incarnate form, or are they simply orders? Or guidelines? Looking at the chapter on the Istari in Unfinished Tales, we read that these emissaries were forbidden to reveal themselves in forms of majesty, or to seek to rule the wills of men or elves by open display of power, but coming in shapes weak and humble, were bidden to advise and persuade men and elves to good.
Forbidden to reveal themselves.
Yeah.
And that's not the only time we see that word.
No.
In the Tale of Years, we read that the Istari were forbidden to match his power with power. Pangs of exile and the deceits of Sauron, they might redress the evils of that time.
Okay, so they were limited in the beginning, having to learn again, and they didn't have a whole lot of memories of their time in the Blessed Realm. But this was centuries later, and any slow learning problems would be overcome by now. So maybe Saruman could have exercised his power in some way, even if he shouldn't have done so. Now, that doesn't say that he did, I confess. This is arguing from an absence of evidence, but if we go with the Silmarillion's version of the origin of orcs, they are corrupted elves, meaning they'd retain many of that race's characteristic traits, like the ability to go without food or rest for a very long time, getting rest while walking even. So maybe that's the angle we can take.
Right, and we are explicitly told that orcs are very enduring. In Myths Transformed, which is part of Morgoth's Ring, that's History of Middle-earth Volume 10, we read that while orcs needed food and drink and rest, many were, by training, as tough as dwarves in enduring hardship. Well, of course, the orcs in this chase were, in theory, very highly trained orcs. So, I mean, the Uruk-hai, at least, were certainly the elite of Saruman's forces. And it's clear that Grishnach's folk were some of Sauron's better forces.
Yeah.
None of them really seem to be, run-of-the-mill garden variety orcs, except for the Moria orcs.
That's true, but they managed as well, though they struggled the most at the end of the race. So maybe there's something there. But maybe we're missing the obvious answer. They had almost a full day's worth of a head start, and they rested for less time. I'm not sure the 300s had any chance of ever actually catching them, and the fact they got as close as they did is still quite remarkable.
Yeah, I agree. I think that all makes sense. And they had reason to hurry because, obviously they were on a very urgent mission.
Yeah.
They're afraid of Saruman and Sauron, so they're going to pull out all the stops.
Oh, you bet. Yeah.
But going back to the original question and whether their speed was natural or, supernatural, I do want to lend some credence to Aragorn's idea that there is some will that lends speed to our foes.
Yeah.
After all, we took it at face value that the unseen barrier Aragorn speaks of in that same sentence was a real thing. So
True.
Maybe there's some credence to this as well. But I suspect that if this is a real thing, it's more like a wall of force that Saruman puts up, allowing the orcs to pass through, but not the three hunters. I don't think that he's lending power or speed to them directly in the way Morgoth might, but I think he's acting on the natural world in a way that allows them to pass and not the good guys, if there's any supernatural element to that at all.
That's fair. So it's a debuff to the good guys, but he's not actually buffing the good guys as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're immune to the debuff rather than actually being buffed.
So he's not casting slow on the hunters and haste on the orcs. He's just casting slow on the hunters.
He's just throwing something up in the natural world that slows down the good guys, but that the orcs are immune to.
That's fair. That makes sense.
That's my thought.
Yeah, I think that's where I land. I mean, it does seem, though, that it's possible. I mean, I think even that was probably violating the law, so to speak.
Oh, for sure.
That was going well beyond what he was supposed to do.
Definitely.
But yeah, so he had that ability. Interesting. Well, folks, that wraps it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast, but be sure to join us again next week when we will bid men sound Helm's horn and will ride forth.
Maybe we shall make such an end as will be worth a song.
Yeah.
At least maybe a parody song.
Maybe.
Well, as always, we want to take a moment to thank some truly important people, our patrons at the Círdan's contribution tier. I'll start with Demay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, Bruce in California, Mario in Utah, Seth in Texas, and Ella in California.
And we're also going to include Joseph in Texas, Kathy from North Carolina, Lori from Washington, Josh in Oklahoma, Carlos in California, Brian from the UK, Cameron in Nevada, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, and Nick from Wisconsin. Thank you all so much for your support. And we also want to thank the team that helps make the show better. That includes our research assistants Thomas Karat, Marilyn R. Pekila, and Tanya Plashkova, as well as our barlowman Becca Davis, producer Jordan Rennells, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, and website guru Phil Dean.
This show wouldn't be what it is without our supporters and our teammates, so thank you all so much. Now, folks, be sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe to the show through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app, whatever it is.
That's right. And one last thing, as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, the grievances you've held for 500 years to Barliman at theprancingponypodcast.com.
Barliman is a lot more reliable these days, but we get a lot of mail, so we'll get to you as soon as we can. And your question or comment may be featured on a future episode.
As always, folks, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.